for military ethics. Now, Russia controls trade vessels transport oil and black, Baltic and Mediterranean seas, often not in compliance of sanctional demands. In situation of its possible detentions by port authorities, oil naval force will definitely cause some legal proceedings, and we also monitor situation with the Nord Stream after it collapsed some months ago. But except events in such gray zones, direct negative impacts of military activities may be evaluated via international humanitarian and international criminal law, exactly for conflict zones, and as administered by nuclear, thermal, and hydroenergetic. Ukraine's thermal power plants become a specific target of Russian missile attacks in Ukraine since autumn 2022, and some of them were totally or partially destroyed, as Russian aggression's goals was to make total blackout for Ukrainian energetics. Such tool of war was determined as totally illegal in set of resolutions adopted by bodies of United Nations, Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe, Council of Europe, and other structures. And in future, the orders of International Criminal Court are expected to be issued for organizers and executors of such attacks. Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was captured by Russian occupying forces in March 2022. And in that time, Russian troops tried to take under control South Ukraine nuclear power station, but without success. Last year, Zaporizhzhia power plant was permanent tool of Russian provocation, and its non-precedent example proved weakness of International Atomic Energy Agency. Any conventional proceeding is not still started on this issue, but in future the question arises for possible responsibility, including material one, and not only the declared illegal attempted annexation of the Zaporizhzhia region of Ukraine, but for agency itself. But the worst and most broad-scale negative result was in the Kakhovka hydroelectric station committed by Russian troops in June 2023, but not so in framework of energetic, but regarding ecologic, navigation and humanitarian disaster caused by flooding in Kherson region and by collapse of interregional melioration systems connected with Kakhovka reservoir. As on issue of Russian missile attacks against thermal power plants, destruction of Kakhovka station caused adoption of international resolutions, and it may be reflected in future in the activities of International Criminal Court, and it may possibly activate the discussion regarding international ecocide criminalization. As now, Roma Statute is not a source for criminalization ecocide, and maybe discussion of next conventional adoption on this issue may be started just exactly after the set situation in the south of Ukraine. Also, the issue of green energy must be pointed, and relevant challenges connected with Russian aggression started long before 2022, exactly from the beginning of occupation of the Crimea, where solar and wind power stations of Ukraine were located. Illegal so-called nationalization of Crimea-located wind power station was organized in 2014 by so-called authorities, and as a result, some individual proceedings were started before the International Court of Human Rights from station owners and its top manager representatives. And I may say that some such cases now are in communication, started by European Court in 2022. Also, Russian illegal authorities declared fake nationalization of Crimea-located solar power station after broad-scale invasion in 2022. But this process may have possible goal in hiding real beneficiaries of these stations. In common, issues of power stations and energy networks' real beneficiaries became essential in Ukraine after Russian aggression started. And the example of Ukrainian oligarch Rinat Akhmetov and his machinations with Kyivenergo, also as example of Russian oligarch Babakov and his clan, and their scam with Kherson Oblenergo and Sevastopol Oblenergo, maybe not. And it was now a part of numerous criminal, civil, and administrative proceedings in Ukraine. Our association started researches on issues of energy market and transition during post-conflict period in Ukraine, and our results will be soon presented. So thank you for your attention, and questions are welcome. I'm sorry for not personal participation caused exactly by warfare in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Borys, for your words. We can imagine the kind of challenges that you are having in your country right now. But if I may ask a question, a part of the calamities that this war is creating. In your opinion, before the war, what are the measures that a country like yours is supposed to have in order to have a more clear transition and less dependency of foreign sources of energy?
Well, the issue of transition and issue of changing the sources of energy are crucial. For example, now in Ukraine we have discussion, would we restore Kakhovka energy plant after war? And in common, Russian attacks against hydroenergetics, against solar power station, and against wind power station are challenges for energy transit in Europe. As investors and also international corporation see the situation, and they may change the strategies and see that some kind of energy is too vulnerable in modern situation.
All right. Okay, Borys, I know that it's kind of late for you and we don't have the best setup here, but if I get any questions from the audience, I will forward those to you, all right?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for attention.
Thank you very much.
And wish you a good, fruitful work on Congress. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody. Well, I think that now we got Pedro. Pedro, you are me. You were recently appointed as a CEO of your company in May 2002. Pedro has served as a member of the Avangrid Board of Directors since 2019, and previously served as a member of the Board of Directors from 2014 to 2018. Pedro formerly served as the Chief Development Officer for Iberdrola, and where he has executed more than 100 transactions and led the international expansion of Iberdrola. Pedro has a degree in Law and Business Administration from the Instituto Católico de Administración y Dirección de Empresas, ICADE, at the University Pontificia de Comillas in Madrid, and an MBA from the University of Chicago. Pedro, welcome to the session, and we are looking forward to get your points of view about energy transition.
Okay, so good morning, everybody, and a pleasure to be here and to be a sponsor of this program, because we think these gatherings are important, and I think the leadership that is here is relevant to have conversations. I think in our case, as Avangrid and Iberdrola, we're very pleased on everything we're doing to change the world. I think the first question I usually ask to all of us is ask what we have done, each of us. Okay, many times we put stones, hurdles, I don't like this, I don't like that. Okay, what have we done, each of us? I think in my case, my company, we have done more than 40,000 megawatts globally of renewable energy. Since I joined the company, we are the third largest renewable company here in the US. I think we have a business plan right now for 3 years with more than 20 billion investment. Most of that is networks and renewable energy. Without networks, there is no transmission of energy, and therefore, it's impossible to move electricity around. So electrification needs both things. I think in our case, we're very pleased on the actions the U.S. government is taking. The IRA, the Jobs Act, the Infrastructure Act. I think compared to many other places in the world, the U.S. is taking actions. I mean, those hundreds of billions are very keen on infrastructure, very keen on renewable and green targets. Is something that promotes the local content in the U.S., which I think is important to make sure that, production and facilities are developed in the U.S. I think in our case, we have, almost 9,000 megawatts right now of renewable energy here in the U.S. We have been very keen in the past 25 years to make sure that, things are done when they become efficient from a pricing point of view. We were actually not in favor of a massive solar development because, prices on CapEx, mainly, Chinese-driven technology, were very, very high, and the production were small. When CapEx and prices adjusted, I think we agreed, it's a time to go full speed. And finally, one of the last comments I want to make is, the energy availability, sometimes in the US, we take it for granted, okay? People have air conditioning 24 hours a day, heating 24 hours a day. That's not the case in almost anywhere else in the world. I think the prices we pay usually here for, to fill up the car or electricity are much lower than most of the countries around the world. energy is a scarce resource. So from that point of view, right now, when those of us, for example, in the Northeast, there is no more gas pipelines. There is no more generation being built there. There is basically no more energy available. So that's why when you see now offshore wind development, we are developing the largest largest scale only real project going on right now in the U.S. of the Martha's Vineyard coast. That's going to serve probably more than 10-15% of Massachusetts energy needs. That's only one park. So you see how big these parks are. When we are building a transmission line from Canada into Massachusetts, and probably this reminds me, especially surrounded by so many lawyers, the two main issues that I think we face to get anything done. The first one is permitting. In the US, permitting as compared to other parts of the world is really an issue. It takes years, 5 to 7 years to get an offshore wind park, 2, 3, 4 years to get an onshore park. That's less than a year in most of the countries where we also do business. I think the second issue is, and again, sorry for all those lawyers here, litigation. Okay, this is a country you can litigate on anything you want, and the problem is nothing gets done. Okay, and very few of us have the patience to be 2 years in litigation because opposition to a transmission line, even with a referendum funded by the fossil generators. So these things do not happen naturally by citizens. You need to understand who is behind many of the things. I think both things, permitting and litigation, when we see attempts by Senator Manchin, Senator Schumer, in collaboration with many of the states that are trying to do things, these are the two items that we need to focus. Also, in terms of economic development, we cannot have a factory in every state in the U.S. It doesn't work. That's not efficient from an macro and economic development point of view. So the states getting together, as they're doing right now, working with DOE, working with BOEM, working with the federal government, trying to decide how to optimize the supply chain. That's also important. So that's why, if I was to say a couple of things that we need to work together and try to change, is permitting and litigation. And I'd like to stop there.
Well, Pere, very interesting. It looks like you are giving us a call to action, honestly. So I got a question for you. And what technology do you think that will be critical for the energy transition?
I think if nothing happens, those guys, with generation right now will be the happiest guys in the world. You have demand continuing, to grow, no more generation being built. You don't need to be an expert in macro or competitive markets. What happens to price goes up. Okay, I think as long as we understand that it's not even a transition energy. Is energy is needed, so we need to have that energy being done there. And almost all type of energy is needed. We cannot build hydro, and the pump storage will be ideal to have everywhere, but some states do not have that resource. We'd love to have massive renewables onshore. Some states are small; they don't have the size of being developed massive thousands of megawatts. So you cannot rule out any alternative because the combination is good. But I think for me, I go back to the comments before. Those CO2 targets, carbon neutrality that we all have, in our case 2030, and it's a real target, scope 1, scope 2. We like to focus on 23 and 24 and 25. I think people who focus on 2050, seems to me they don't care about what's going on, because probably they will not be here by 2025. So I think those nice targets in the future, we prefer to focus on what we're doing right now. And I think for me, those transitions, there is no comeback. I mean, this year, probably 1.5 or more than 1.5 trillion dollars invested in renewable energy development globally. So there is no comeback. It's a question of how much you slow things. A lot of people want to delay things, and that's okay. We are suffering that all the time. But I can tell you, 2001, when we did our first strategic plan, then my chairman and I can tell you we had almost 99% of the people against us. Government, regulators, companies, everybody you can think of. I think right now when we're doing things, and even we have some environmental organizations against us, I think we're on the right direction. Because if we start to have people opposing each other, but people being green, that seems, at least, the green is moving ahead. So for me, I go back to the permitting and the litigation. If you want things to be done, in a timely manner, you need to solve those two issues. Otherwise, I think, you will see a very slow development.
Thank you, Pedro. The message is clear. Remove the bureaucracy, right? So now we have José Ramón. José Ramón, if you allow me. José Ramón is member of the European Parliament. He represents the Partido de la Ciudadanía within the Renewed Europe grouping. José is interesting enough, has a pharmacy degree as well from the Complutense University of Madrid, an honorary degree from the ESERP Business School, a diploma in public leadership and entrepreneurship from the University of Deusto, and also participated in the Harvard Kennedy School and in the Global Leadership Program, as well as the University of Oxford in the Future of Government workshop. Thank you for being here, Ramón, and we are ready to listen to your comments about the energy transition.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. First of all, my perspective will be more geopolitical, because one of the key points to take into account on what is happening is about the geopolitical situation. We have heard what Borys has been saying about the real situation that we are working in so hard from the European Parliament as well, with war and how we have to work in this kind of situation. So the current geopolitical changes will have a decisive effect on the design of the new world order. For example, during the origin of energy is one of the main important things, because we have to take care about the quality, the quantity, but as well, it is the mode of transportation of the energy. So this is one of the key points to take into account. So, and it has been a historical constant through the history, and we can take some example of what happened in 1933, for example, with the Yom Kippur War, or even in 1979 with the Iranian Revolution. So it's a key point decision links to the geopolitical situation. So now in Europe, we are working at the European Union level. We are working in a important strategic decision, that's the open strategy autonomy. So it has developed in various strategies. One of them is the external perspective, because we need to take decisions, and we have to take in different agreements, for example, in the rare substances or materials, and as well internally. And in this case, we have developed market reform projects in the last moment. So in this geopolitical context, energy markets have always been a great strategic important. And in this case, Europe's excessive dependence has taken one of the reasons that we are here. It had been very easy seeing what happened in Europe, mainly in Germany. We had a 75% of dependence of the Russian gas. So we have need to take a decision in that point. So, and access to the energies, access to the material, access to the logistic point of view is so important, because as Pedro has said, it's important the legal certainty, but as well as important what kind of decision has to be taken between the member states, 27 member states that are close and linked to other regions, for example, USA or China or the Asian countries or the Middle East countries. So everything is linked, and it's so important and relevant what kind of decision has to be taken internally over big markets, because, for example, European Union is almost 16, even 20% of the general market in some regions. So taking into account these kind of important things, as well are important the kind of decisions, for example, energy transitions, energy decisions. We are not working at the Green Deal, the different packages of the Green Deal. No, the last one will pass through in the next September plenary session, is the refuel aviation fuel. I am the rapporteur of that file. So we are absolutely involved, but we have to keep an eye, because one of the decisions we have taken at the European Parliament for example, in the green emissions or CO2 emissions, is that the car are not allowed to use fossil fuels from 2035. It is important, it is fine, we are all involved in that, but we have to take care in one thing, that China is the owner of most of the rare material. 90% of the rare materials are from China, because they are the owner, because they have the concessions, or because they have the full logistics system operators. So this is one of the things that we have to take account, even that we are taking decision in that area. So depending on the gas, we have told, is one of the main important things, because it has been as well one of the main important mistakes that we've been doing internally or with region? Well, some years ago, nobody thought about that a war will happen not in our borders, just at home. 70 years of success of European Union, it has the possibility to not to think about that. But it has happened. And this has shown us how massive our dependency of energetical dependencies that we are having. So we need to create new system, we have to create new strategies, and we are creating that, obviously, with some acts and investment in that. But we have mainly important things is that we have to see that nothing is granted. Everything can change in just 1 minute. I can absolutely remember, we have it was, Borys sadly know much better than me, it was February 24th in 2020 when the war started. We were in a crisis summit in the Senate in France. Mm-hmm. Let me put this example. It's maybe out of this, but it is important to know which is the scope. How things change. We were 75 members there, and some European parliamentarians there. What happened? We have in front of us the ambassador of Ukraine. Mm-hmm. We're talking about. We were supposed to talk about what will happen and that, but just some hours before the war started. And it was a big decision about the sanctions that we are doing now, but the first step of that was not the sanctions. It was to decide if we used or not should be used the SWIFT code. Something that is part of the past if we talk about that now. But this is the kind of decision, if we look forward, look back, that's so important and relevant as well. They are in order to take decision, in this case, linked to the strategy of development on this dependency. So we need a market reform, of course, but the main important thing is to create the environment to invest. Who will invest? You not only not have legal certainty, but as well, you don't know what will happen if some politicians decide something and some changes start. It is supposed to start in 2030, 2035, but they are not available to do. So my point of view, my perspective, maybe because I'm pharmacist, I'm from the scientist side of the game. We don't only need to give certainty. We have to give to the market the certainty of the things are available or not available to do. If technological are available to do, if the engineering materials and strategy are available to do, and they need to support the support of the institutions. So it's so important that we work together hand by hand, because the main decision that we have internally in Europe not only affect on how many decisions out of the region will be taken, but as well affect directly to our companies, to our competences, to the competences of our companies, and as well the creation of jobs. I'm finished immediately, but with these kind of decisions, Europe had decreased from 40% to 13% before and after the war the needs of fuel supply from Russia. Somebody will say, well, it is not bad. But some of us say it is too much, because we don't have any strategy. One of the proposals and the propositions that from the European Parliament we put on the table is to cap the amount of fuel and prices to buy to the Russians. Why do I say that? Because, for example, in Spain, it is supposed that we should decrease the bought of fuel or gas from Russia. It is just the opposite. We have bought more of the double. Why? Because of internal decisions. Some of the decision, in this case, personal decision of the President Sanchez in Spain, he broke the rules with Algeria and Morocco. So we had a pipeline connected to to Algeria, then our strategical national political decision break down. So in order to get less fuel, less gas from, in this case, from Russia, it was just the double. So we have to take into account what kind of decisions, because we have 27 member states, all connected, and the decisions that we have at Europe, because sadly we are not always taking the same decision the whole time, but we are learning and we're improving a lot. It would happen or will affect to the regions and as well to our companies, to the competitiveness, to the success, and as well of the million jobs that we are creating. Thank you so much.
José, thank you for your thoughts. A lot to think about.
Yes.
Somehow aligned to what also Pedro said before. We already talked with Borys, and now I want to talk to Pere. Pere Pastor Vilanova, is that the right way to pronounce your name? Pere was appointed in November 2015 as a judge of the European Court on Human Rights and elected section president on 19th of September of 2022. You graduated from Science on Toulouse in 1990 with a degree in politics, also a master's degree in business, administrative and financial studies from the Montpellier Business School, which he obtained in 1992, and continued his studies at the École Nationale of Administration in Paris. Thank you, Pere. And was awarded a master's degree in public administration in 1994, and in 2002 obtained your PhD in public law from the University of Toulouse. Thank you for being here, Peter, and we look forward to listening to you.
Muchas gracias, Luis.
Gracias.
Hablar en castellano,
Es
porque
perfecto,
me parece
no hay problema.
que podíamos hablar sobre los dos temas. Sin más transición, hablaré de la transición energética, que se ha convertido, como todos saben ustedes, en un asunto de suma importancia a nivel mundial, enfocado en la reducción de las emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero y en la promoción del uso de energías renovables. En este contexto, el Tribunal Europeo de Derechos Humanos, basado en Estrasburgo, ha interpretado el Convenio Europeo en relación con diversas cuestiones ambientales, incluyendo el impacto de las políticas y proyectos energéticos en el derecho de las personas. La jurisprudencia del Tribunal en el ámbito de la transición energética está en constante evolución, reflejando las crecientes preocupaciones de la sociedad ante el cambio climático y las obligaciones de los Estados en cuanto a la protección eficaz del medio ambiente. Esto representa un desafío muy complejo, que requiere encontrar un justo equilibrio entre los intereses individuales y los colectivos, y las obligaciones de los Estados y los colectivos, así como entre los imperativos económicos y los ambientales. En esta breve presentación les daré una breve visión general de la jurisprudencia de nuestro tribunal sobre cuestiones relacionadas con la transición energética. A tal efecto, veremos, en primer lugar, cómo ha evolucionado la jurisprudencia europea relacionada con la transición energética en torno al derecho al bienestar y al domicilio, como también en relación a otras fuentes de protección inscritas en el Convenio Europeo. Luego examinaré rápidamente el auge actual de los litigios climáticos ante nuestro tribunal. Empecemos con la jurisprudencia medioambiental relacionada con la transición energética y su protección jurídica en base al derecho al bienestar y al domicilio inscrito en el artículo 8 del Convenio Europeo. La jurisprudencia en materia de medio ambiente se ha desarrollado a raíz de la famosa sentencia López-Ostra contra España de 1994, según la cual los daños graves al medio ambiente pueden afectar el bienestar de las personas y privarlas del disfrute de su vivienda. Esa sentencia considera que una contaminación grave del medio ambiente puede atentar contra el derecho a la vida privada y familiar, sin por ello exigir necesariamente que se ponga la salud de las personas en grave peligro. Así, aunque el Convenio Europeo no reconoce expresamente el derecho a un medio ambiente sano, puede plantearse una demanda basada en el derecho a la vida privada y familiar cuando una persona sufre directamente formas graves de contaminación o molestias varias. Como se ve, el listón de la injerencia parece bastante alto. El Tribunal también se ha pronunciado en varios asuntos relativos a actividades relacionadas con las emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero, ya se trate, por ejemplo, de la contaminación causada por el tráfico automovilístico en general o, más concretamente, de la contaminación vinculada a las partículas emitidas por los vehículos diésel. En lo que respecta a las actividades industriales que utilizan combustibles fósiles, el Tribunal declaró la violación del convenio en el asunto Jubel y otros contra Georgia relativo a la contaminación atmosférica generada por una central térmica. Del mismo modo, en otra sentencia importante, que es Cordella contra Italia, en 2019, el Tribunal consideró que la exposición a partículas finas de dióxido de azufre procedentes de un complejo siderúrgico había supuesto un riesgo para la salud de los demandantes, al tiempo que ordenó al Estado demandado que adoptara medidas generales para hacer frente a la persistencia de la contaminación atmosférica. Otro caso interesante es el caso Dubečka y otros contra Ucrania, que es muy significativo, a mi parecer. El tribunal determinó que el funcionamiento de una mina y una fábrica de carbón había contribuido a los problemas de salud de los demandantes debido a la contaminación del aire, el agua y el suelo. El tribunal concluyó que aunque las autoridades eran perfectamente conscientes del impacto negativo de esas actividades en el medio ambiente, nunca habían relojado a los demandantes ni encontrado una solución para reducir la contaminación a un nivel tolerable para los vecinos. El tribunal también sostuvo que la constatación de la violación del convenio conllevaba la obligación de adoptar las medidas necesarias para remediar a la situación de los demandantes. En el caso de las actividades industriales que emiten gases de efecto invernadero, el tribunal también ha podido considerar otras fuentes de protección como el artículo 2 del convenio relativo al derecho a la vida, cuando el riesgo al que se expone una persona puede resultar mortal. El tribunal desarrolló su doctrina relativa a las obligaciones positivas en la sentencia Oner Yildiz contra Turquía de 2004, un asunto donde muchas personas murieron tras la explosión de gas metano procedente de un vertedero incontrolado. El tribunal condenó al Estado por su inacción y por no informar a los vecinos del potencial riesgo mortal que corrían. También parece que otras disposiciones del Convenio Europeo se están convirtiendo gradualmente en instrumentos jurídicos eficaces para acompañar la transición energética. En efecto, la jurisprudencia medioambiental del Tribunal Europeo también se ha desarrollado en torno al derecho a la libertad de expresión e información, al consagrar el interés general de las personas o asociaciones en contribuir al debate público sobre cuestiones medioambientales. El derecho a un proceso justo en los litigios medioambientales y, cómo no, el derecho a la propiedad privada. Con respecto a este último derecho a la propiedad privada, el tribunal constató, por ejemplo, en 2018 la violación del derecho a la propiedad del demandante en el caso Dimitar Yordanov contra Bulgaria. El demandante se quejaba de que la utilización de explosivos para explotar una mina de carbón a cielo abierto había dañado su casa y le había obligado a abandonarla. De forma similar, la protección de los bosques, que actúan como sumideros de carbono, también puede justificar una injerencia en el derecho a la propiedad privada, como por ejemplo en el caso de la desestimación de una solicitud de licencia urbanística debido a que un terreno privado estaba clasificado como reserva natural, y también en la decisión de reforestar un terreno privado con el objetivo de que no se pueda construir sobre el mismo. Por último, cabe añadir de que se han presentado demandas ante el tribunal relativas a actividades relacionadas con las energías renovables, como la contaminación acústica de las turbinas eólicas o la inundación de reservas naturales como consecuencia del proyecto de construcción de presas hidroeléctricas, que era un tema contra España, por lo cierto. Segundo punto, y voy a terminar, el auge de los litigios climáticos ante los tribunales internacionales, y en particular el Tribunal Europeo. El número de demandas presentadas últimamente ante el Tribunal Europeo en relación con la lucha contra el cambio climático va en constante aumento. Los casos más recientes ponen de manifiesto nuevas dimensiones, en particular porque se alegan daños futuros y se hace hincapié en el aspecto global del cambio climático. El Tribunal aún no se ha pronunciado sobre la cuestión de la supuesta inacción de los Estados europeos ante el cambio climático, pero 3 asuntos sobre esta cuestión se encuentran actualmente sub iudice ante la gran sala del Tribunal Europeo. Las veremos seguramente durante el próximo mes de septiembre. En primer lugar, tenemos el asunto Weiren Klima Seniorien contra Suiza y que ha sido llevado ante el tribunal por una asociación suiza de mujeres mayores preocupadas por las consecuencias del calentamiento global sobre sus condiciones de vida y su salud. Primer asunto. Segundo asunto, el asunto Kanerva contra Francia, que se refiere a la denuncia de un exalcalde francés que afirma que Francia no habría tomado medidas suficientes para prevenir el cambio climático en su municipio costero y que corre el riesgo de sufrir inundaciones muy graves. Alegó que este supuesto incumplimiento por parte de Francia, violaba su derecho a la vida y su derecho al respeto de su vida privada y familiar. Y por último, el caso que me parece estrella ante el tribunal, que es el caso Duarte Agostino y otros contra Portugal y 32 otros estados europeos, está interpuesto por jóvenes portugueses de entre 10 y 23 años. Reclaman contra 33 estados del Consejo de Europa, y sobre todo los más importantes, España, Reino Unido, Rusia, Ucrania, Italia, Alemania, Francia, etcétera, etcétera. Lo que reclaman los interesados es que se reconozca la responsabilidad de esos estados en el calentamiento global que, según ellos, afecta a sus condiciones de vida y su salud, en particular en lo que se refiere al principio de equidad intergeneracional. Y en particular piden al tribunal que se pronuncie sobre la base de varios artículos del convenio, no los voy a citar, pero leídos a la luz de los compromisos estatales asumidos en el marco del Acuerdo de París de 2015 sobre el clima. Estos tres casos me parece que serán decisivos, no solo para futuras actuaciones ante el tribunal, el nuestro y de todos los tribunales europeos, y de cierta manera hacia otros países no europeos. Los tres casos también servirán para profundizar en la comprensión de los estrechos vínculos existentes entre los derechos fundamentales de las personas y las cuestiones climáticas.
Muchas gracias, Pere. Me parece muy interesante, should I do in Spanish, que Pedro mencionaba que los litigios forman parte de los obstáculos para una transición energética, y tú mencionas que los litigios están creciendo de una forma acelerada por no tener una transición energética. Pero tú mencionaste en otra conversación conmigo que el Tribunal Europeo basa sus principios en el convenio de 1950. ¿Es obsoleto?
No es obsoleto. Efectivamente, como bien mencionas, el convenio europeo es de 1950, ha sufrido pequeñas enmiendas, pero más de carácter técnico, y es verdad que el convenio en sí no reconoce actualmente y expresamente un derecho pues, al medio ambiente sano, derecho contra el calentamiento global, la transición energética, pero bueno, los juristas tenemos mucha imaginación, como imaginas, ¿no? Y siempre encontramos algunas cosas. Y aquí pues tenemos medios jurídicos eficaces para luchar contra, si el caso viene ante nosotros, ante el cambio climático y la transición energética, porque un artículo mismo de nuestro convenio nos permite de interpretar el convenio. Y hay un tema muy importante de nuestro tribunal, quizás que difiere al Tribunal Supremo de los Estados Unidos, en que nosotros entendemos de que nuestro convenio de 1950 es un instrumento vivo y que se tiene que adaptar a medida del tiempo pues, a los retos internacionales y a la conciencia colectiva actual. De manera que podemos encontrar en el soft law y en otros instrumentos internacionales pues, instrumentos eficaces pues, para luchar jurídicamente y de manera eficaz contra estos grandes cambios bueno, yo no diría que se avecinan, que existen ahora mismo.
Muchas gracias, Pere. Ettore Maria Lombardi. Ettore Maria is the professor of private law and international business law. Yes, please. Can you switch?
Sorry.
No.
Come here.
The University of Florence School of Law, with extensive experience in corporate capital structure, very interesting, banking and finance. Has a PhD in private law from the University of Florence School of Law, a master in laws from Harvard Law School, a licentiate in canon law from the Pontificia University of Lateran, and a degree from the University of Florence School of Law. You also hold an advanced artificial intelligence from the Oxford Said Business School and advanced certificate in business sustainability from the University of Cambridge. You are an expert in energy transition and climate change, so we're looking forward for your comments at all.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank to be here. Well, your words are too much for me, but I thank you very much for what you said. So I will take a more professional approach. I will be very quick, so don't worry. And I would like to entitle my presentation as Digital Sustainability and Environmental Sustainability, or at the roots of energy transition. Why? Because in my opinion it's very important to understand what is the meaning of sustainability nowadays, because just in this way, so understanding what is really sustainability, we can as well face the issue of the energy transition. But before speaking about this core issue, I would like to stress a profile that is the fact that we are living nowadays a double revolution, so a digital revolution and a green revolution. What is the digital revolution? The digital revolution is on our faces, so it's what we are living today. For example, we were connected also, if not very successfully, with Ukraine before. Or Crimea, and so digital revolution is whatever it's created and we can use to improve our connection, commerce, market, and so forth. This digital revolution is peculiar. Why? Because it has an approach that is a bottom-up approach. So it's what we were doing with our computer, our cell phone, and so forth, that are a revolution completely our way of living, so our life. And on the basis of these changes, the politicians, so the so-called regulators, have implemented new rules or new policies or new approaches. That's the digital revolution. In the same time, we are living the so-called green revolution. And green revolution is what, for example, Pedro, I don't see Pedro, was saying before. But Pedro, no. Oh, José, sorry.
No.
With the name, I'm terrible. Yeah. Especially José was saying about the need of changing our way of transport and so forth. That's a kind of, it's a simple profile, but we have many profiles on this issue. In general, green revolution is something that is changing our life deeply, our habits, because it's trying to impact less and less on environment. This green revolution is slightly different from the digital revolution because it is up-down. It has an up-down approach. So because our behaviors are not very green, usually tendentially, so there is a policy. So the politicians are trying to force us to work in a certain direction and to achieve certain level of behaviors that are pro-environment. Which one was the effect of COVID-19 in this situation? For sure, COVID-19 was very impacting the digital revolution. So we started to use technologies that before we have, but we didn't use. But this profile had as well a probably negative impact on the green revolution, and we will see why. Before this profile, I would like to share with you a very quick analysis of the world frame in terms of green revolution and digital revolution. So we have in the European Union the 54-55 package. That is a package, José Ramón was speaking about it, that is trying to reduce by 2050 the quantity of CO2 that we can pull in the environment. The USA and China as well have this kind of approach, so an approach that is trying to reduce the production of CO2 in general. So let's arrive to the point that in my opinion is quite important. What is sustainability? So the meaning of sustainability. In this regard, we could speak about a very strong evolution that is going from CSR to ECG, to the SDG. So CSR is corporate social responsibility. So the responsibility of each company is for what he is doing in an environmental level. ECG is environment, social, and governance. So it's a concept a little bit wider than what I was saying before, so about CSG. And finally, we have the UN SDGs, so the Sustainability Development Goals, that are something slightly different because it's a concept even wider, even more complicated, and involving many actors in the society, so at a political level, economic level, academic level, and so forth. So here I made an analysis, but I'll skip it, regarding the different approach about CSR as an ethical level, sustainability as an economic level, and ECG as a financial level, because I will be too technical, and I would like to avoid this profile. So what, and I'm reaching the point, what is sustainability? Why sustainability is important from this transaction, the energy transaction? Transition, sorry. The lawyer approach is emerging with transaction. That's I made a mistake. Because being a lawyer, transaction is for me very important, but we are speaking about transition. So I'm sorry about that. Analyzing sustainability, we have to make reference to the Brundtland report. And before, I think Pedro speak about the intergenerational liability and responsibility, probably, and why a Brundtland report is very important is in this sense, because there is the description for the first time of the sustainable development that is described in this term. I will be very short. Is a development that satisfies the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs. So that's why there is an intergenerational approach and a consideration that we have to evaluate. In this path, so the one started from the Brundtland report, we have as well the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights with the Article 37. And actually we have as well the action plan that is always in the UE, very important in this sense. So trying to implement sustainability as well at a corporations level. Here there would be a reference as well to the green finance that is a little bit too complicated. But what is important to say, I would like to stress out here, is that green finance is nothing special. So when we spoke about green finance, we are speaking and we are considering something that is completely different from the finance in general. It's not true, because green finance is just the target that we want to achieve via tools that we already have, obligations, stocks, and so forth. Sustainability, and I close my remarks because probably I was already too long, is that sustainability is a concept that is very important nowadays. We can understand this transition, the energy transition, just analyzing, considering very properly this concept. Why? Because sustainability is not something related just to environment, but something related to society, to economy. So it's a concept very wide that we have to consider, that we have to analyze, and that we have to develop, especially in terms of digital sustainability, because just in this way we can reach what we want. So a sustainable world and the intergenerational respect in the future. Thank you.
Ettore, thank you very much. I listened to your words. It seems to me that you are telling us that sustainability for you actually means the sum of all the parts needs to be correct. And then my question is, being in Europe, do you think that we are going in the right direction in Europe? Do we have all the sum of the parts correct to achieve the transition by year 2035 or by year 2050?
Well, I'll be frank. In my opinion, theoretically, we are working in a proper way. So there is something that we are doing, a good path that we are pursuing. But in practical, we are still far from reaching what we need. And for example, war I didn't want to speak about war, but war is something that is impacting very strongly with our green politics. Because, for example, in other period, politics we would act in a different way to calm the situation and to overcome it in a diplomatic way, but we are not operating in this way. It is changing completely, not just the geographical area, Ukraine, Russia, or Europe, but it's impacting strongly all over the world. Because, for example, José Ramón was speaking about Spain and the cutting of the production of energy from Algeria and so forth. That's something that is happening continuously, as well in Italy, for example. So theoretically, we are working, but the path is still long. So, but I'm very positive. I'm from the Leibniz perspective, so I hope that we will manage.
Well, I wish we have the opportunity to sit and get a glass of whiskey with Pedro and José, because it seems to me that the approach about the philosophy about we are going in the right direction is one, and Pedro is saying, let's move.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter if we are completely right or wrong, but let's move and
Absolutely.
make sure that we have changes that eventually will impact the outcome.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, David, you're next. You allow me, is Dean Emeritus, and your last name is Schizer, of Columbia Law School, and author of a new book on non-profit management called How to Say the Word in 6 Not So Easy Steps. David is one of the nation's leading tax scholars. His research also focuses on non-profits, energy law, and corporate governance, and holds a Bachelor of Arts and master degrees from Yale College and a Juris Doctor degree from Yale Law School. Thank you for being here, David, and we're looking forward to your statements.
Thank you. So the truth is I'm completely changing my topic. This is not what I prepared to talk about, but I was so engaged by what the other speakers were discussing that I want to weigh in on these issues too. So what I want to talk about specifically is how we can pursue both environmental and national security goals at the same time. And Borys's experience and non-presence here emphasizes how important that is. So I think, at one level we understand the climate issue, lower emissions, but in terms of security, the essence of it is we have to be careful about who we depend on as our supplier, and we don't want to depend on countries that can use money in ways we think are problematic or dangerous. So I'm just going to offer a few quick thoughts about how to operationalize that. The first is when we focus on the clean energy transition, we obviously need to think carefully about supply chains. Where are these minerals coming from? We need them in order to build solar panels. We need them for EV batteries and so on. And that can have specific implications. So, for example, when we take a traditional car off the road and we put in an EV instead, we reduce emissions. If we use a hybrid instead of an EV, we use half as many emissions. So you might hear that and say, okay, we should be focusing on EVs and not hybrids. Well, not necessarily, because if we're in a world where we can't get as much of the minerals as we need for these batteries, you want to ask the question, how large is an EV battery compared to a hybrid battery? And does anyone know the difference? Is a hybrid half as large? It's actually 100 times smaller.
Wow.
And at least between 60 and 100 times smaller, because an EV has to charge and work, whereas a hybrid recharges. It's a much smaller battery, which basically means that if you put 60 hybrids on the road, for each EV that you'd put on the road, you're reducing emissions 30 times more in the short term. So once you account for the minerals, you think about it differently. And by the way, my country, the United States, totally misses this. We subsidize EVs. We don't subsidize hybrids. Not very smart. The other point is we still need fossil fuels. They represent 82% of global energy today. And the question is, so how do we think about that? And I think one point is they're not all created equal. Natural gas, for example, generally is a lot better than coal, so among fossil fuels, favor the better ones. But here's my last point, which I'll illustrate with some examples. Timing with fossil fuels is really important. So from a national security perspective, what we especially want is to be able to ramp up quickly. A country is invaded. The invader is a country that we don't like. We want to stop relying on them for energy, just as José was describing with Russia. So we need other suppliers who are friendly countries that can ramp up quickly so that we don't have the price spikes that we saw in February of 2022. So that brings me to a point that may not be appreciated enough, In the US, shale oil and gas has a very good property about it. It can ramp up very quickly. There's another piece to this, and then I'll come back to shale. In addition to wanting a supply that can ramp up quickly, we'd like it not to be around forever. This is the legacy asset problem. If you invest today and it's got a 30-year useful life, you're going to feel bad about turning it off, but maybe we don't need it in 5 years. So I want to compare something the United States has done. We just approved a traditional project called Willow in northern Alaska. It'll take 7 years to come online, and it'll last for 30 years. This is bad, right? This is the wrong choice. Whereas with shale, the technology of this is the wells can come online not in 7 years, but in 6 months to a year. So it's great for a crisis. And these wells don't last more than 2 years. You have to basically do it again. So I think we want things that are temporary, and that has to do, and here's sort of where I'll end, that has to do not only with the kind of wells that we drill, but also with the infrastructure that we choose. So, Pedro was mentioning the challenges of pipelines, and it's really a problem in the United States. So the U.S. has gone from not exporting natural gas 5 years ago. It was illegal and we weren't doing it. Now we're the largest natural gas exporter in the world, and we do this with liquefied natural gas. And the capacity in, say, Pennsylvania is so much greater than we're exporting now because we're constrained when it comes to terminals and also pipelines. So we ought to do something about that. Now, interestingly, most of the U.S. natural gas, LNG production is going to Europe, but not all of it. Some of it is going to another country called Massachusetts. And the idea is, and this is the fault of my home state of New York, because Pennsylvania has massive amounts of natural gas. They could easily build a pipeline to serve Massachusetts, but they have to go through New York. And New York has said no. And New York has said no for misguided reasons I'll discuss in a second. What that means is that this precious and scarce natural gas, which actually has foreign policy significance because our allies in Europe need it, some of it is getting unnecessarily diverted to Massachusetts. So we need a permitting process that accounts for not just one state's opinion about climate and the fact that we want to, not have anything coming out of the ground anymore. I understand the impulse, I think it's misguided, but this is a national and an international problem, and so you can't have a permitting system which gives New York a veto. And the same point is, we need these green minerals. The permitting there is hard, that needs to be streamlined, and finally, in November of 2001, two things happened. First is my oldest child was born, and the second was a permit was filed to build the Cape Wind project off of Massachusetts. My daughter's 21. I'm so glad that it's being restarted, but it took 20 years for that company to give up. So we need to do better than that. Thanks.
Thank you, David. David, you mentioned the prolific amount of gas coming from Marcellus and the Pennsylvania area. And I hate to point to Pedro again and again about his call to action about the litigation. My question is, even with change you need to do fracking, and fracking has these massive amounts of use of water, and then you have litigations of people because water here, water there, contamination. So my question is, this permitting thing seems to be it's a non-federal thing, it's state by state. Do you think that the permitting reform is a problem for clean energy too, or a lack of a permitting reform?
Yes. So I think we have to think carefully about what jurisdiction should be able to make decisions. And so in the example I just gave with Massachusetts and New York and Pennsylvania, and this all having geopolitical implications, I think it has to be a national process where a government is going to see the whole picture and not just the local process. I'll just add one more thing, because about, a dozen years ago, a co-author and I looked really carefully at water contamination with fracking, because at the time it was thought to be a really serious concern. It turns out it hasn't been. It turns out the instances of water contamination are quite rare. And so just quick intuition as to why. Does anybody know where the water is? Is it about, 3 kilometers below ground? Is it about a half kilometer below ground? Anybody know? So it's 100 meters below ground. That's all it is. The oil and gas, 3 kilometers, 4 kilometers below ground. So they're not close to each other. But you do have chemicals going down, oil and gas coming up. And there are two places where this can go wrong. The first is as things are going down and going up, you don't want them seeping sideways into the water, which is why you need basically 1.5 meters of concrete and steel well-placed to prevent that from happening, and with the right well construction, it shouldn't happen. So where did it happen more? It happened more when the stuff was on the ground and people said, well, what are we going to do with this? Just put it on the field over there. And then it went right down into the water. So once people learn not to do that anymore, turns out water contamination isn't that much of a problem.
Thank you very much, David. Kanerva. Kanerva is a Senior Associate of Environment, Infrastructure, Natural Resources and Energy at Castren and Snellman, which is your friend. You are an energy lawyer and Doctor of Science in Technology, and you advise clients on different energy law assignments and industrial and infrastructure projects. You previously worked at the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment, and you draft the energy market legislation, prepare energy policies at national, international, at the European Union level. You also work as a lawyer at the Energy Authority. It's an extensive CV. Let me go through it. At the Finland National Regulatory Authority, you are a researcher focusing on energy and environmental law questions, and with offshore and power. You hold a Master's of Law from the University of Helsinki, and you are currently finalizing your PhD in energy transition at the Aalto University. Thank you for being here, Kanerva, and we're looking forward for your sharing with us.
Yes, and just to say that I'm not finalizing the second PhD. I got it ready, so in May I successfully defended my PhD regulating the change in the EU electricity markets, finding the balance between tomorrow and yesterday. So, but very, very happy to be here with these great panelists today. Yes, energy market, new or old challenges. I think this question is very broad, as we have heard, so it can be approached from many different perspectives. I will start by approaching this from EU energy market perspective, as José already did, but I have more legal point of view to the question, and then I continue towards more theoretical reflections, which are maybe some in part of the earlier speakers' thoughts as well. We already heard in the beginning that, in Europe, the Russian invasion to Ukraine is still continuing after 1.5 years. War is war. It is a catastrophe. It is catastrophe to human beings and to nature, as we heard. And last year, we saw how the war affected also energy markets. The decreased gas supplies, in particular, raised the price of gas and further the price of electricity. Also, the prices of derivatives were increased. To put it simple, the war caused an energy crisis, as José mentioned earlier. When we had this panel discussion online in last autumn, many Europeans were really worried about how they have afford to heat their homes during the winter. This was not a new problem, but the scale of this problem was something totally unforeseeable. We also saw that energy companies were going bankrupt. Others were struggling, for example, with retail price caps and increasing guarantee requirements. Even in Finland, we had serious security of supply concerns before the winter, and the Finnish transmission system operator warned that it might be needed to circulate blackouts in a controlled way to keep the electricity system up and running. So, exceptional 2022. The EU countries and the European Commission, as well as the European Parliament, tried to mitigate the situation in the energy markets, for example, by some temporary amendments in the market rules, by proposing and requiring energy demand reductions, successfully, adopting a market revenue cap for electricity producers, solidarity payments for fossil fuel sectors, adopting rules on environmental permitting for clean energy, and so on. In addition, we saw that the governments were establishing, for example, information campaigns to reduce energy consumption, which is something familiar from the oil crisis in 1917s, I have heard. Overall, we saw a lot of actions taken by the legislatures and a strong political aspirations to fix the situation. Luckily, we can now say that the winter in Europe was quite warm, and the worst-case scenarios were avoided. The energy crisis, however, showed some major vulnerabilities in the European energy system, as we have already heard today. I think the most critical issue was the dependency, and is the dependency on Russian fossil fuels. However, this dependency has been significantly reduced following the measures implemented last year. However, the reliance on fossil fuels in general has not ended. The energy crisis showed in a brutal way that we need to hurry with the clean energy transition. This was also pointed in the EU's REPowerEU plan. An important part of the answer to the crisis is an accelerated clean energy transition. The same cure applies to the climate crisis, of course, and we have heard this from the scientific community already for years, even decades. From the legal point of view, for going in there, so let's take a step back. I think it's very clear to all of us here that switching from current systems to a clean energy system is a fundamental change, requiring systemic, institutional, technological, economic, behavioral, at least, changes. The role of law in this change is partly to drive the change. I think Ettore mentioned that sustainability crisis is something where the law is very active, and it's a top-down perspective which the law is applying there. And this may happen, for example, through stricter carbon emission reduction targets, of course, or by enabling market entrance for new innovative solutions. I would also like to say that even though it is a top-down approach, so of course the energy sector itself is working hard, as we heard earlier, pretty much on the same direction currently. But it needs the right direction. The law also has its conservative element, which is really also needed if we talk about rule of law. I think Professor Lyria Bennett-Moses has aptly pointed out that the law builds on the landscape of yesterday. To implement the clean energy transition, which was already mentioned, that it needs huge investments. And not all these investments can be funded from state budgets, even though remarkable state aid packages have been launched recently. And therefore, we need a foreseeable investment environment. Such environment is not essential only to the newer sectors like hydrogen, but also to the established ones like electricity production. I think one of the most difficult challenges, and I wish you luck, in the energy markets to the legislators and regulators is how to combine these two aspects successfully. On the one hand, we need to facilitate and even drive the clean energy transition in a just way. No one should be left behind. And on the other hand, we need to provide visibility to the market actors and investors. You mentioned strategy, which maybe was lacking. Maybe we are getting there. We probably need more vision from the political level, but there is also a risk, did we get the correct one? So a foreseeable investment environment, I don't mean that the legislatures cannot react to the evolving real-world developments. On contrary, just means that the fundamentals of the legislation, if they are changed, this needs to be done very carefully. And sometimes these solutions could be even tested before the wider implementation. I promote personally regulatory sandboxes, but they are not for every testing, but maybe for some. Further, I think the question of resilience or flexibility or future-proofness, very many terms have been used in the literature. So the resilience of the law is very important, and it should be considered every turn. And this may sound self-evident objective, but I think it is very hard to implement nowadays, especially in highly regulated sectors. If you think about electricity legislation in the EU, it is a tremendously complex and also huge amount of legislation nowadays. Very hard to handle. And even if we saw the speed of EU legislation to increase tremendously during 22, during the crisis, I think we cannot and we even shouldn't rely on this kind of speed of updates outside the acute crisis. Because conducting proper impact analysis, public hearings, and the democratic process requires time. I conclude with saying that the resilience of the law, as well as the visibility to market actors, they are not new challenges, but my guess is that they are becoming more and more important in the energy markets to promote both the clean energy transition and the rule of law. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kanerva. In the rest of the time, I will refer to Cristina. Cristina is the State Secretary of the Ministry of Energy, Master's degree in Foreign Languages, Master's degree in Economic Law, and a diploma in Advanced Management. You have been a chair of the Corporate and Social Responsibility for the American Chamber of Commerce, and a member of the Amnesty International and Moldova. And you have also a master's degree in Economic Law from the Academy of Economic Studies, a master's degree in Economic Law, and a postgraduate diploma in Advanced Business Management from the AMSNC. Thank you for being here, Cristina.
Thank you for having me. I'll try to speak very fast because I think we have 5 minutes and we are all tackling the crisis today. And I'm coming from a country, Republic of Moldova, where crisis is a routine. So, and a challenge as well. So for me it was kind of challenging to build my discourse for today. Because in Soviet Union we had very cheap energy, but instead we had no human rights. And in 90s, when I was a student, so we had very harsh winters and we had a very big energy crisis. So I remember we had no heating in the university. We were staying fully dressed and we had no electricity. So I was learning by candlelight, which is, sounds now, I think, science fiction. But nobody really talks today about that crisis because a crisis that does not lead to change is doomed to be forgotten. And unfortunately, it took a war to shake us all, to wake up us all, and then we all of a sudden started thinking that maybe we should be more ethical when we build our economic relationships, and we should rethink the way we generally treat energy. So when the war started, the Republic of Moldova and Ukraine disconnected from the Russia-Belarus electricity network and connected to OSCE, which is the European electricity network, just for a test. But in fact, that test moved to being a permanent transition. And that test actually saved us lives and time a lot. We also survived after 30 years. It was the first winter when we survived without a single cubic meter of Russian gas. And we actually are very proud about it because for Russia it was a tool of blackmailing Moldova for many years. And that also helped us to change the settlement of the Transnistrian dossier. For those who do not know, Republic of Moldova has a region, Transnistrian region, that is occupied for more than 30 years by Russian troops, and we have Russian ammunition there. So it is a territory that is not controlled by Moldova. And now because of this war, or due to this war, and because of the energy transition, and because everybody now speaks about energy transition, so we are trying to reintegrate this territory again to become part of the country. So in almost 2 years, Moldova, who is also known for being one of the poorest countries and who is always, either begging for financial support or going on shopping tours, call it whatever you want, we have managed to have gas stocks, to have the flexibility to buy gas stocks, and today we're not only asking for help, but thinking and offering our contribution to regional security. We also have a Minister of Energy finally, so our ministry in the current government is the youngest one. We're only 4 months old. And by the way, my portfolio comprises international relations, European integration, education, digitalization, cybersecurity, and innovation. So I also can speak about sandboxes. But we are a dynamic ministry because we are not fully staffed, and we set ourselves the ambitious goal, and because it's very trendy now to speak about decarbonization, and but we are a small country, and hopefully we'll managed to be the first in European Union and to achieve decarbonization before 2050. And the objectives within this big vision of decarbonization is to work with the buildings. We have unfortunately a legacy of very poor civil engineering, so our buildings consume more than 50% of energy and they do not produce anything. We also, the second objective is the electrification of transport because it consumes more than 35% of energy. And the third objective would be the integration of the renewables into the grid. So hopefully, because we have now political understanding, political help, and generally I think because today we lawyers finally speak about energy, which means that things are getting serious. So things are changing and we are becoming more ethical. We have only one planet until Elon Musk maybe discovers another one for us to move. But what I'm very proud of is that finally my country did not let this crisis go to waste, but instead we started doing things that we never thought we are capable of doing. Thank you very much.
Cristina, thank you very much. Well, thank you for sharing those stories with us. I think that because of the time, I will stop here. Probably we don't have time for questions, but if there are any questions, please let me know, and I will forward those to the panel, and we will find a way to send those questions back, those answers back to each and any one of you, okay? Thank you for being here. Thank you for all the panelists. It was great to have you here today. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.